Why don't we dive into some seventh chords? I'm excited to hear about this.
Okay, yeah, a little bit about that. Obviously, you're going to do this for a long time, but this may be more for your own development as players. You may be trying this with your students who are perhaps playing a jazz band and just learning about seventh note chords. So let's just quickly lay out the first thing you want to do is figure out the order of chords in a key. Let's say all the chords that are possible in a key. So I'm just going to play all the seventh chords in a key. What I mean by that is here's all my triads, and I'm sticking to the key. The theory word for that is diatonic, the notes in a key. So those are all my triads. I'm just going to stick one more note on the top by adding a third. So C, E, G, root third, fifth, and now 7. And we could do a whole session on how do you name those chords, what's the difference between major 7 and minor 7, but that's not the place for it here. Pardon me. So here's all the chords that are in any key in terms of their quality. So major 7s are the 1s and 4s. The dominant 7 is the 5. In other words, it's going to be that way no matter what key I do it in. Let's just prove that briefly. This would be too low, but it'll look better on the screen. So all those qualities are exactly the same no matter what key we're in. And then, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to again play the chords under the rule that they need to stay in chord land between C and E. And I'm going to put those in there in a moment, but first I want to show you the chord progression that I think works really well for this when you're exploring seventh chords. So here it is. 1, 4, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And then on the end, if I'm going to repeat, I play one more 5 chord. So there's not room for that, but I go back to the G. So this is the order. I'll leave them up there just for a minute so you can see how those look. C, F, E, A, D, G, C. It's a wonderful progression. Roman numerals. Okay, and I can't show the last one. So those are all positioned very awkward, you can see. So here's my great secret about playing seventh chords is you do not need to play seventh chords in 4 inversions, root, first, second, and third inversion. That you can play almost every seventh chord either in root position or second inversion. I'll show you how that looks. So here is root position and second inversion's right here. Same chord. Let's go back to the other. And I'll put a C under just to help the computer understand what I'm doing. So that's the same chord in a new order. So basically, we are not using this one because it's awkward, and we're not using this one. So just between those two, if you stick to these rules, and here they are, stay in chord land, play root position or second inversion chords only, you'll find the chords flow beautifully in tune after tune after tune. So I'm going to do that now, and what makes sense to me is not to start here because I know that my chords are quickly going to go lower than this lowest note. So I'm going to start on a bird chord here. I'm going to play bass notes underneath, so you can ignore that. It's just to help the computer play, show you what I want. So there's my C chord. F is right there. Notice only 2 notes changed. Okay? In this case, the third chord, they all move. The top comes down to make a new second inversion chord. And now we're back to a root. You should see how there's a pattern emerging. Now we're here. And then we go back to the 5 chord, which will be off screen, but it's the same as the second to last chord. So this is a wonderful progression that uses 6 of the 7 possible chords in any key. And when you improvise over that, you get a very nice, rich environment for your scale to fit, because this is interesting. I find it more difficult to play improvisations over triads than I do bigger jazz chords, because the more notes that are in the chord, the more notes match those chord tones in your playing. So rich chords are really helpful for improvising. Let's do this with I'll do it with maybe a bossa nova might be good again. Let's try that. So just the chords first. 2, ready, here is C. F is next. And E minor 7, A minor 7, 2 or D minor 7. Here's your 5, G7, and back to my low 1, right back to that 5. Okay, I could take those same steps, and I'll wrap this up in just a second, Chris, to warm it up. And now the computer is analyzing my scale, so don't let that throw you off there. In fact, let's see. I can turn that off. All right, so now I'm going to skip all the steps about changing directions and the pauses and just go to improvising over this. Maybe my left hand this week is more rhythmic. Okay, now let's just say we're in the key of F. I'll just show it one more time that way. So I'm going to look for the chords that will live in this zone. And in this case, it's best to start here on a root position, because now I'm going to show these chords. I'm just going to put them down. That's a good solution for this key. So each key was going to require its own adjustment to fit into chord land. Remember, only use root position and second inversion chords, and a lot of your problems about connecting chords will go away. So I'll wrap this up with an improvisation on F major, and I'll just say that this progression, if you happen to be a person who uses my That's Jazz series, is in book 2 on a tune called Farmer's Market. So if you forget this progression, that particular tune is based on this nice progression. So I'll do one more improvisation, and we'll wrap this up for questions. Maybe I'll do a swing beat just for variety. A minor, D minor 7, E minor 7, going to C. Maybe one more time. All the notes are in the key. So I didn't use any other jazz tricks there. I just used F major notes. There's, of course, other cool things we could do. So let's call that a wrap on the Scaling the Chords lesson of the day.
That was fantastic, Bradley. And I was running a couple of polls in the background because I was curious. We landed on a thought there, and I thought it might be kind of neat to wrap up the presentation, you speaking to this. And you even mentioned it. And so some folks were saying in the very beginning of the presentation that they had a majority of their students who were inclined to improvise, and they had very strong ears, and it sort of detracted almost, is what I was gathering from what the attention that they were giving to their sheet music and learning how to play the traditional route with notes and method books. And so I ran a poll, curious to know how many folks, first off, had maybe a third of their students, or a third to a half, or more than a half of their students who are interested in improvisation. It looked to be that 1/3 to a half or more students were interested in improvisation. And where I'm going with that is I think students at the end of the day, at least even in my own studio, they want to play songs that they know, that they feel most close to, or at least a style of music that resonates with them. And for a majority of the students, at least the ones in my studio, that's pop music, that's film music, that's sometimes jazz, but it's music that resonates with them, that's familiar to them. Yes, and I loved what you said, though, halfway through your presentation, talking about how we have to approach each student differently and leverage the way that student learns is what I was gathering you were saying. So if that student's more inclined to improvise, maybe it's a great starting place for their lessons, and Scaling the Chords is a beautiful way to introduce that. and then segue nicely into the other stuff that we want them to learn as well. Could you speak to that just for a moment?
Yes. So as a jazz and improv, first of all, two things come to mind. About 12 or 15 years ago, when I first put out the That's Jazz series, my publisher said, sit at the edge of this booth. I would send me around to all these conferences and sell books. But I'm an artist, I'm a teacher. I didn't know how to sell books. I didn't know what he meant. So as the teachers came by, this was again 12, 15 years ago, I said, hello, are you interested in teaching improvisation? And because teachers tend to be nice people, a good 75, 80% of them said, maybe, I don't know, let me look at it, friendly, normal. Right. But I would say 20 to 25% of them were actually offended. They would say something like, well, certainly not, and stroll off. So I will take more than partial credit for having turned that ship around. My colleagues and I, Leela Viss, Forrest Kinney, Eric Baumgartner, I hope I don't know who I'm all leaving out. There's been a movement to rebalance, and this answers your second question, piano pedagogy to what it was once in the days of when Mozart or Bach, particularly Bach, was teaching. Scarlatti wrote essays about the true art of keyboard playing. It is not new to learn reading and improvising and creativity alongside. It's rather old, and we've gotten away from it. So, when I'll be clear, you will never hear me talk poorly about reading music. It's essential. It's critical. But it tends to get the lion's share of attention in our teaching. And I'm all about trying to bring in equal. I would even go as far as to say 50% of the practice time and 50% of the lesson time is off page. So there you go.
As you're saying that, so I ran another poll with exactly that question. How much of the lesson time do you allocate for improvisation? And a majority was in that third or a little more, which I was really delighted to see. I thought that was fantastic. But even if it's not even a part of your curriculum right now, just 5 minutes in the beginning of a lesson will do a lot. And then you can, if you want to, ease up and inch up and do a little more as well. From you, Bradley, as a piano teacher, I'm thinking, I'm new to improvisation. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I've gotten a lot of value from what you've offered today. Now, I'm a little hesitant to introduce this to my students. What's a quick win for me? What's an easy way for me to get started?
A couple quick things come to mind like I said, touched on earlier, embellishment. Improvisation can start with embellishment. So take a simple tune. Maybe I'm going to just do Twinkle Twinkle and begin to add to it. Let's say that was in a method book. We have, and we might name that embellishment. We might say, let's try neighbor notes, away and back. There it was. So decorating a tune can be the first sort of step into, creating a sense of variation. That's a way to do it. The other way that comes to mind from a resource point of view, I wrote this series because it was deliberately for non-jazz beginning keyboard improvisers. It starts at a very basic level. So this is actually a comprehensive method. You can learn to play the piano with this, reading, improvising from day one. So those come to mind as good starting points.
That's great. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I guess my closing comment, and then Bradley, I'll let you say the last word today. So be thinking about what you want to say. I'm just going to end by saying, friends, keep pouring into your students, whether you feel appreciated now or not so much, just because of the nature of kids are busy, families are busy. I promise you're making a lasting impact in your students' lives, and it really does matter. So keep doing it with enthusiasm and passion. You're awesome for doing it. You're a rock star piano teacher. Bradley, I turn it over to you.
So I would just end with this. You don't have to be an expert to teach improvisation and off-page creativity. Your job as a teacher is to open the door, to show the possibilities. And it's a journey. It's a journey for you as a teacher. It's a journey for your students. And it's the opposite of, I have to learn everything I can about Chopin before I teach it. Rather, you can take this journey together, exploring, because it's a creative journey. It has left and right turns. Just begin to integrate it into your playing, and it will lead you down the road of its own accord, because humans love creativity and they love self-expression, and you find yourself pulled in, and your students will teach you. One student will make a comment about something they liked, and all of a sudden you're teaching that to someone else. So I always close the same way based on that philosophy. And here it is, it's my signature. It says, until next time, enjoy your creative music making journey.
Keep it up, friends. Take care.